Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be going through our Week 7 must-add waiver pickups. It's hard to believe we're almost reaching the halfway point for the regular season. And if you haven't noticed recently, waiver wire pickups really matter. You see guys like Rico Dowdle. Had you pick up him, you're probably winning or losing your matchup, depending on whether you picked up Rico Dowdle. So it's important to be able to stay on top of it. We got 5 players that we think are worth an add if you got a bench spot. So Joe, who's the first one?
Yeah, first guy we're going to go with here is quarterback Jaxson Dart of the New York Giants. If you didn't snag the guy over the excitement when he first got announced he was going to be the starter, it looks like you can go ahead and play this guy. I think you can potentially stream him if you need somebody. In 6-point touchdown quarterback scoring leagues. He's been scoring right around 20 points this past week. He had 25.6 points. He's one of those guys who gives you a nice rushing upside. He's got a couple of rushing touchdowns in his 2 out of his 3 starts as well. He's going to have a tough game that's coming up on the road against the Broncos, but I do think I think he could be okay. He's currently rostered in 35.4% of ESPN leagues, so he is still available. And like Steve said, I think if you got an upcoming bye, go ahead and stash this guy. Maybe you don't want to stream against the Broncos, but there's opportunities later. In the NFC East, he will get the Dallas Cowboys at some point. But even after the Broncos got Philly, who did okay against 49ers in Chicago, some defenses he should be able to do something against outside of the Broncos.
Yeah, unfortunately, when it comes to Dart, Joe, they already played the Cowboys in Week 2, and then they've got him in Week 18. So unfortunately, you won't be able to use Dart for that Week 18 matchup. But when it comes to Dart, it's like, okay, yes, the Giants have a tough schedule in general, and that's not an easy opponent when you play the Broncos. But neither was the Eagles. I don't think many people expected the Giants to beat the Philadelphia Eagles and for Jaxson Dart to play as well as he had. It's really unfortunate that we kind of were robbed the opportunity of seeing what him and Malik Neighbors would be able to have done due to the ACL injury at MetLife. So, but regardless of Malik Neighbors not being there, you're still seeing Wan'Dale Robinson and other players get involved, and because of the rushing upside, he doesn't necessarily need it. So I think at this point, I think Dart's a guy who, because of that rushing floor, I think he's, probably worth nothing crazy, probably, 2 to 5% FAAB. But, even looking at a guy like Justin Fields, right? He's a guy that maybe a lot of people had a lot of confidence in because of his rushing upside. That Jets offense looks absolutely abysmal. And now they're talking about Garrett Wilson now having, possibly a knee injury of some kind. You don't know the severity of that.
I don't think it's his knee. It looked like a lower side injury, like by his hip or ribs in between.
I thought
there.
I saw a knee, but
something to do with
if he
his
does
lower
miss
back
time,
or
we're early on this. But if he does miss time, I would say do a swap and pick up Dart and drop Fields. That offense just looks absolutely anemic.
Oh, you should go ahead and do that anyways. That Jets offense is in shambles. They don't know what they're doing. Fields, he can't process anything. He's holding onto the ball way too long. I don't understand. He had plenty of opportunities today just to take a quick open flat route. Couldn't. So Jaxson Dart to me is playing way better than Justin Fields at this point. Provides you that rushing upside, can get you the rushing touchdown. I would, if you've been streaming Fields or relying on him or thinking about having him, I would make the swap now.
All right, so next guy we're going to be talking about here is running back Kimani Vidal for the LA Chargers. Joe, Vidal was a guy that you and I were pretty excited about in the pre-draft process a year ago when he was a late round draft pick. What was it? I want to say, what was it, 6th or 7th round? It was a late round pick for Vidal.
Yeah, I think it was a 5th or 6th possibly.
Yeah, something like that. We thought that maybe he would have got taken earlier, but nevertheless, that's when he was taken. With the Chargers drafting Kameron Hampton, obviously we thought that his value was down the tubes, but with Hampton going on IR, Vidal ended up being the guy. I actually thought was going to be more Hassan Haskins, and I was wrong. Vidal, out really carried him and was way more involved than Haskins. 18 carries, 124 rushing yards, 4 targets, 3 catches, 14 yards, and a touchdown. Now, they did play the Miami Dolphins. Their run defense has been an absolute sieve. So, again, it was a really easy opponent. Haskins only had 6 carries for 14 yards and 1 target, 1 catch for 9 yards. So, the big thing I worry about with Vidal, I wouldn't go nuts. And maybe I'm wrong about this. I've been wrong before. Maybe 5 or 10%. I do think there is some legitimacy to the rumors out there that the Chargers are wanting another running back. And I wouldn't be all that surprised. And maybe honestly, this is a guy now that we're talking, now it's on the top of the dome, maybe I should have considered saying that this guy should have been in our top 5 here. I think Blake Corum might be a guy that Jim Harbaugh might kick the tires on, see if he can acquire Blake Corum. If they actually are looking for a running back, and the rumors are true, I don't know. Vidal did great, and maybe as a result, they don't end up going for a running back because of how well he did. But it was against the Miami Dolphins, so I'm a little bit leery as to okay, this might be just a one game wonder type of situation.
Yeah, it definitely could be a 1-week wonder, but I still think he was worth the mentioning here and possibly worth the pickup. Like you said, I wouldn't go crazy and chase the points because it was against the Miami Dolphins, but I wasn't honestly heading into this game, wasn't sure who was really going to be the benefactor between him and Haskins, but there is no doubt. I mean, he almost got 20 carries, added a few receptions, and had a receiving touchdown. So he was clearing away the guy. But I wouldn't expect these type of performances outside of being able to play the Dolphins. I do think it's interesting. I'd be surprised if I definitely think the Chargers will be working the phones. I don't know if it'll be Blake Corum. I think maybe are they able to, do they go after a guy like Kamara, or are they able to get Breece Hall from the Jets? I think maybe those guys could be more likely if those teams decide to trade him away.
I don't know, though, because I think Corum, the reason why I think Corum could be interesting is because how the Rams were so excited about Jarquez Hunter. And I believe he's been mostly a healthy scratch for them. I think not just because I don't think it's because they don't like him. I just think that sometimes they have a longer term plan for these players. Are not going to have an immediate impact. So I don't know. You might be right. I mean, Kamara and Breece have been guys that we've been hearing about, but I don't know. Part of me thinks it's going to be Corum.
Yeah, I mean, you got the Michigan connection, no doubt. Also, don't know if the extent, but Corum did leave the game with an injury as well, so I don't know how that would impact him getting traded. But I don't know the extent or how if it's a long-term thing. But I did know he exited the game today. All right, so our next player here is going to be wide receiver Kendrick Bourne. Again, if you've been following along and watched our videos last week, he was on our list, and doesn't seem like too many people hit up the waiver wires and acquired Kendrick Bourne. Doesn't look like they believed it. I mean, he's only up 1.9% from last week. He's at 37.7% rostered in ESPN leagues. And look, I think as long as Mac Jones is starting games, go ahead and, snag Kendrick Bourne and have confidence putting him in your lineup. He had 11 targets last week against the Rams. He got 9 targets in this one, 5 catches, 142 yards in back-to-back games. And you mentioned it last week, Steve, the familiarity that the two of them have from their days in New England, and definitely appears to be that connection definitely appears to be real. I mean, look, Ricky Pearsall was out, but Jawan Jennings was back this week, and Kendrick Bourne still had this performance. So that gives me confidence moving forward. Like I said, I think caveat could be Mac Jones starting. I don't know if he continues this, if Brock Purdy comes back.
I agree. I think that is the caveat. You see that chemistry, and depending on who the snake caller is back there, I think that could make a huge change. But with Jawan Jennings, though, I think I heard they said that he's been playing with a high ankle sprain, a low ankle sprain. multiple ribs broken. I mean, that offense is basically in the infirmary. I mean, I mean, they just can't catch a break when it comes to having health. And so I think Bourne is just the next man up. He's the healthiest guy out there. I don't even if Ayuk were to eventually come back from the ACL, I think he's going to be rusty out of the gate. So I really think that Bourne. I wish I would have picked him up sooner. He kind of unfortunately I didn't get a chance to get him. But he went a lot faster than I thought. So but yeah, I think he's definitely worth an ad. I'd say about 5%.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I wouldn't go crazy just because, if Mac Jones isn't the starter, he is more of a stash at this point. And with, Pearsall and Jennings dinged up all the time, Bourne, like you said, is the healthy guy and will be the next man up if either of those guys miss.
All right, next guy we're going to be talking about here is tight end Harold Fannin Jr. of the Cleveland Browns. He's a guy we've had on before, but recently people have not been as excited about him. I don't blame him. I also dropped him. So I'm with the crowd here. I know on ESPN he's rostered a little bit lower in sleeper leagues. He's at 50%, but he had 10 targets, 7 catches for 81 yards. And the thing that was interesting is, with David Njoku, I believe he had a hip pointer at some point during the game. So he didn't play as many snaps. I want to say he was in the 40%. And Harold Fannin outsnapped him. I think David Njoku is a really interesting player that possibly could get traded at the deadline. He has 1 year left. I think Fannin is the future for the Browns. And so I think, we're going to be getting closer to that trade deadline. Rumor has it, the trade rumblings is that there's going to be, and they always say this, but if it's legitimate, like they do say that there could be multiple trades that happen. That's what Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport are reporting. I think that Njoku could be one of those guys because I don't think the Browns are going to have any intention to re-sign Njoku. I think Fannin, like I said, is the future. And if that happens and then they were to trade Njoku, then it really clears the path for Harold Fannin to be a tight end. So I think he's a good stash guy. Don't know if you necessarily need to start him week in and week out, but the tight end position's kind of dire as it is. So I kind of lost faith on him a little bit. I think that's probably because of, he had the Joe Flacco, Dylan Gabriel situation. Anytime you get a new quarterback on there, you don't know. Now it seems like they got a rhythm, but who even knows? I mean, the Browns look so bad. Do we see Shedeur Sanders sometime soon? We just don't know.
Yeah, I think we could see Shedeur Sanders soon. I know at one point I thought maybe we would see him in this game against the Steelers, but they stuck with Gabriel throughout the whole game. I do think Harold Fannin Jr. is interesting. Like you said, I'm not so sure I would call him like a streamer or maybe if you are desperate, if Bills and Ravens are on bye, if you got Kincaid or Mark Andrews, maybe you do need a guy like Harold Fannin off of the waiver wire here. But regardless, we always say tight ends are very friendly to young quarterbacks. So to me, whether it's Gabriel, whether it's Shedeur Sanders, I think there's a spot for Harold Fannin. And, it's nice to see him earn some more targets. And I think he definitely should have a spot in this offense. And without a guy like, Cedric Tillman, they just really need some other playmakers outside of Jerry Jeudy to really, elevate themselves. I know Isaiah Bond kind of showed some flashes, but I mean, he had one play today where he wasn't even looking for the ball, hit him square in the helmet that was around the red zone. That was just a bad look.
Yeah, I just think that, and this is kind of a tangent, so I'll be brief. I think if the Browns don't give Shedeur Sanders an opportunity to start a game at least during the season, that they need to get their brains examined. I mean, Dylan Gabriel has not done. I mean, in the time that I've seen him play, and I watch quite a bit of Browns, sadly, because I've got a lot of Quinshon Judkins, so I'm invested in how the Browns offense does. And, there is nothing that I'm seeing that's making me think in any way that he has that position under lock and key, and they shouldn't even consider it. I mean, you took this guy later on. He had a lot of potential. I know maybe he's immature, and there's, he doesn't fit, the I can't even think the word, but there's a certain code that you got to just, to be like an NFL player, that you just have to act and operate a certain way. And I understand maybe that Shedeur is kind of outside that norm, but it's like they better give him a shot, or otherwise you cut him or trade him or do something, because you're just letting him rot, honestly. Like, even to think that is like, whoa, should he be quarterback 2 or not? I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah,
It's like,
right.
who else are you're gonna put Bailey Zappi as quarterback 2? Like, come on, give me a break.
Yeah, I mean, to me, at some point, you got to at least see what you have in both guys. Gabriel's gotten a couple starts here. I think sometime down the road, you got to at least give Shedeur Sanders a couple starts. Maybe he shows enough to where, hey, if you don't want him as your future, like you said, maybe he puts enough on tape to make teams want to acquire him. But to me, you at least got to see what you have in both guys, so you can determine whether or not you need to take another quarterback in this upcoming draft class that they've got a decent amount of picks in with the trade with the Jaguars.
And I'm not even saying that I think Shedeur Sanders is going to take the lead by storm or anything. I'm not saying that, but at least give him a shot. Either way, I think it will. I'm not worried about Harold Fannin either way, whether it's Gabriel or Sanders.
I'm not either, and I don't go crazy for him, but he's definitely worth a stash. All right, to round things out here, our last player is going to be wide receiver Kameron Johnson, and up until this point, maybe you don't even know who Kameron Johnson is. He was primarily a returner for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but they are just absolutely ravaged by injury at the wide receiver position. And this is mainly an ad. Pay attention to the, upcoming injury report. Egbuka left this game with a hamstring injury. Mike Evans is nursing a hamstring injury. Chris Godwin was already out for this game coming in. So it's literally just been next man up. And, in this game, it seemed like Kameron Johnson was the next benefactor. I know Tez Johnson also caught a long touchdown pass, but he had 3 targets and really only had that long touchdown, where Kameron Johnson was targeted 4 times, caught all 4 of them for 64 yards and had a touchdown as well. So I know Sterling Shepard was mixed in. I think he only got targeted 3 times as well. So just with the work that Cam Johnson was able to do in a short span, I do think he could be the higher targeted player that you might want going forward. Or again, if you need a tight end, maybe you look at K-Dot and if he's available, because it's going to be all hands on deck if, Evans, Godwin, or Buka can't go next week, and they got a juicy matchup against the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, I think this is a purely, look at it as similar to a Rico Dowdle situation, although Dowdle obviously, if you invested in that, you're really getting your dividend back. Once Chuba Hubbard's back, I don't really know how more relevant, he will be. You got to look at things in windows. And I think, Cam Johnson is a perfect opportunity to take advantage of that week. It may just be 1 week. But again, that 1 week could make a big difference. That 1 week could be a difference between a win and a loss, and that could mean you making the playoffs or not. So depending on, he's a streamer that could be very valuable depending on if, we know for sure that Ibuka and Godwin and Evans are all out. Because right now, Baker Mayfield's playing at an MVP level. People say he's the early odds-on favorite. I mean, to do what he's doing with the loss of Liam Cohen as the offensive coordinator, and, all the offensive line injuries, all the receiver injuries, and for Baker to continue to be doing what he's doing, it's very impressive.
Yeah, it really is. And it just, at this point, doesn't seem to matter who he's playing with. He's getting it done. Their run game is getting it done, which is also helping him, even without Bucky Irving as well. Sean Tucker, Rashad White are taking over as well. So, man, the offense has really just been hit with the injury bug, but it hasn't impacted Baker one bit. That's why take if the injury report falls the way it is, maybe you miss out on Cam Johnson. I would be fine also taking a flyer on Tez Johnson and hope he gets that deep touchdown.
So that does it for this episode. We went through our Week 7 must-add waiver wire pickups. If you haven't done so already, check out our most recent episode. We talked about, is it a fire sale season? We've been going through our Dynasty Salary Contract League. And another team said, hey, I'm ready to sell my entire team. So we talked about 5 guys that were really interesting. And spoiler alert, we have a trade that we'll be able to announce. One of those players actually did get traded, and we'll be able to talk about what was the return that Charlie got. You're not going to want to miss that. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time.